welcome back to the class, everyone. Today we have finally arrived at our 7th and final Galactic Legend prep video, at least for now until more come out. And it is worth noting as well that we will be doing this for Executor and Profundity. While they're not Galactic Legends, they do kind of match the similar style of you need to gear up about 10 to 15 characters to be able to do this, and then what do you do with them after that? That being said, let's talk about our main guy, SLKR here. He does require, again, 14 characters plus the whole finalizer situation. You're going to want to farm them in a specific order that you can get the best bang for your buck right out the gate, be able to utilize those characters in a way that benefits you in G, C, and TW and everywhere else in the game without really front-loading with all the junk that every single Galactic Legend will bring, at least in the slightest. So, again, the way this is ordered is not to say that one character is an S tier and one's a B tier, but this is the way the order that you should be farming them in. I will have to make one caveat, because I got a comment last time we did this, and for very good reason. The reason why Emperor Palpatine is not S tier isn't because he's bad, especially in the very beginning when you're building a roster. The reason why is because R7 on him is a huge overkill, really, until you start looking at matches between like Starkiller and Rey, and that's really not going to be happening around now, assuming this is one of your first Galactic Legends. So he is good. He's not really needed at R7. He can stay at whatever you have him for whatever reason. So looking at our S tier, these are the characters we want to farm first. And realistically, these are the characters that we're kind of advising people to be farming no matter what you're doing, regardless if you're going for SLKR or not. And there's really good reasons for why. So let's talk about Crew first. The Crew is probably the number one. The dude is an amazing tank. He's very versatile, not just on first order teams, but as well as on UFU teams right now. That gives him viability with both Lord Vader and Seer. I realize those are probably not teams you get before you get first order, but it's worth mentioning. He's also just really good plug and play because the way his kit is wired, recover health and protection constantly, either through being crit or through debuffs on him. I think that's involves both his leadership as well as his unique. There's a lot of situations where he's just unkillable. I think we've all seen a screenshot in Discord, and maybe we're the ones who sent it, of someone timing out with their CLS against a Crew team because 3PO kept applying debuffs and keep increasing his max, or not his max health, but his health and protection, and he just never dies. A very similar situation will happen with a nest and whatnot. So really overall great tank. It's worth mentioning also the 2-turn stun that's irresistible. That's pretty great. Love that. So in the very beginning of the game, he can just be really hard to chew through, and sometimes we'll just call it just a straight up annihilate. Next is going to be Hux. Hux is really valuable on the first order team. Any best first order team that doesn't involve Night Sisters is going to have Hux, and there's actually a lot of reasons why, but the one that I really want to point out is if all allies are first order at the start of the battle, enemies can't gain bonus turn meter while he has advantage. So you immediately shut down a slew of counters to first order the second they aren't allowed to gain turn meter. Back in the day before we had Galactic Legends, one of the most common counters to Crew was JTR, and I guess you could probably still do that today, but the second you throw in Hux and he has advantage and they can't get turn meter, they cannot keep up and eventually just get overwhelmed by first order, who also has a lot of turn meter just built naturally into the team. And lastly is going to be Mara Jade. So Mara Jade is not actually a requirement for SLKR, but if you want to have the best version of Emperor Palpatine, it is always tied with Mara Jade. Mara Jade has come significantly after. She's now accelerated though, so that's pretty cool. And she's on a hard node, and while typically that is despised, it's actually kind of beneficial here, because different from the rest of the Starkiller requirements, she's not on a Cantina node. So you don't have to worry about dipping out on all of your relic energy. You can actually start her, get her maybe to R5 so that she's well equipped for the Palpatine team, and then maybe even after Starkiller, or not Starkiller, but after SLKR, you will have already one of the 4 requirements for Starkiller. Maybe you can bleed into that. So there's a lot you can do there. I won't talk about her kit too much. I guess you'll have to take my word for it that she's really good with Emperor Palpatine. She applies a ton of debuffs all over the place, and she can go really quickly first because she has a really high base speed. Just pairs with him super stinky well. She applies shock, tenacity down, and pretty much anything that Emperor Palpatine could ever want, Mara Jade has the kit to be able to do. So S tier, get them first. They will unlock the most viability overall. Next up is going to be the A tier. These ones are really just meant to fill out the rest of your first order team. While Hux and Crew kind of have a little bit of viability on their own before the rest of the team is built up through their Zetas and whatnot, this is what the rest of your team should look like. There's a little bit of wiggle room with the other ones. The reason why TIE Pilot is here is because of his Omicron. It is very good. I personally love it a lot in 3s. It has some viability in 5s against some weaker comps, but in 3s it becomes really nasty with Hux and Red. Their basics start to deal just a ridiculous amount of damage on top of everything else. Red is really the only team's AoE cleanse. That's very important. He also does a lot of damage and assists constantly on a turn, so he is pretty important to be able to get over that damage threshold where Crew isn't just timing teams out, but you're actively beating them. And then Xylo here is here as well. And he's really the most versatile out of these A tier, because not only is he really good in the Crew and Hux team because he can constantly use his AoE and give the rest of the team turn meter, and that's really great and whatnot, but there are some specific situations where he can actually solo as well. I don't know how often those actually happen nowadays. They used to happen a lot for me back when I actually was going for SLKR and was building up the team, and R7 Xylo was one of the best things that SLKR actually made me do. So I'm very happy with him personally, but it can also be used in the super. Next off, we have to look at our B tier, and this is where a lot of pretty much the rest of the First Order faction gets jammed in, because you can build 2 First Order teams. Both Hux and Crew Lead are both very good. There are certain situations where one is better than the other. The video's not really about that entirely, but you can split them to make 2 teams, especially in 3v3. But to do that, you need actual other First Order reinforcements in there. Really, First Order Executioner, Stormtrooper, and Officer are actually the better of the 3 to be able to do that, depending on what your needs are. But Captain Phasma's TW Omicron, which we do have as well, is just really stinking good. Especially for, I want to say especially for the lower game, but even, I mean, we were using her to counter Lord Vader even before her Datacron came out. So she is very capable. It really is going to come down to whether or not your guild can make a commitment to it, because one person having it, while it can be a lot of fun and there can be a lot of enjoyment out of just killing really strong things with Phasma, if you're looking for actual effectiveness in TW, a larger percentage of your guild needs to be able to commit. So definitely has some use there. And then Emperor Palpatine, we kind of already talked about him. Very good character, very important character, especially early on, because he's so accessible and his leadership is so good. But again, he doesn't really crave Relic 7 for most of his existence. There is a time when that becomes important, but really farming SLKR isn't necessarily that time. He can wait at a much lower Relic level or even Gear 12 for a very long time. I think that's where we had mine for the longest time. C tier and D tier are going to be very small. Vet Han, he's a scoundrel filler. I don't really have a lot of nice things to say about him, but he's not totally useless. Like, we've seen some characters, JMK with Cody. Cody's not getting used anywhere. He's not really a filler. I mean, I guess you can use him in a Padme team or in a Bad Batch if you don't want to do Omega, but he's not good. Veteran Han's a little bit better than that in the sense that there are a wide array of teams that he can be used in. Cure Lead, Dash Lead, BAM Lead, even Resistance teams where he can kind of fill in there and play around a little bit. He doesn't add a whole lot of value to the teams, but the fact that he's versatile in so many, when you're building a roster, that within itself is actually pretty valuable, because if you can constantly switch around as you grow and as you get in better characters, he can kind of shift around and always find another home, so you don't really have to worry about your gear investment going to waste. But that's kind of why he beats out the D tier, which is going to be First Order, Special Forces, TIE Fighter, Pilot, which I think we called him Alphabet way back in the day. He's okay, he just doesn't, I don't know, he doesn't really do anything great. His ship is pretty good, but it's also not very needed. So you're going to have to do him, but there's really no penalty if you do him last. Like, you're going to be able to build the 2 good First Order teams in 3v3, a really good one in 5v5, and you're not going to miss out by not having him. So really every single other character here is more important. It's not that he's terrible, because he's not terrible, but he's just not better than every single other character that we have that comes before him. So maybe he is terrible and I'm just not wanting to actually say it out loud. That is actually going to be it for SLKR. I realize the list is really short. I couldn't justify bringing in a lot of other characters. Typically, I wanted to bring in 2 or 3 other characters that could help fill out the roster. One of the unique things that SLKR actually does for his requirements is the teams pretty much come custom built, different from JML, who you get Mon Mothma and you get a few Rebel fighters, but you don't really have the whole team. You need to fill it out. So it's just Mara Jade for the most part. If you have any other characters for those who are more experienced or already have SLKR, what would be a great filler to bring in the rest of the team? I can't think of many plug and play for First Order, or plug and play that go with First Order. Maybe Xeris would be okay. My big problem with that is if we're really leaning on Hux, he needs a full First Order team to be able to stop Turnmere, so Saris does kind of make that a little bit problematic as she doesn't get to play with them. And then really I couldn't justify building a whole team around Vet Han before you even start working on SLKR. And then Emperor Palpatine, I mean, honestly, him and Mara Jade can just make the whole thing work by their own. But that is going to be it for today. Remember, guys, Profundity and Executor are coming, so this type of video isn't over. But until the next time, stay awesome.